The cold was sharp against his skin, but it was the kind of cold that felt unreal, almost like touching a memory. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the soft blue glow of the cryogenic chamber. His body ached in ways he had never felt before, muscles stiff, joints screaming with every movement. A strange fog clouded his mind, making it difficult to remember where he was or why he was here. As consciousness returned, fragments of memory surfaced. He remembered the laboratory, the scientists, the long slumber into the unknown future. He remembered a world full of bustling cities, crowded streets, and the constant noise of humanity. And then, nothing. A silence that stretched beyond comprehension. The chamber hissed as he sat up, the mist curling around him like gentle smoke. His hands shook as he touched the walls, feeling the cold metal, the wires that ran along the panels and the screens that now flickered weakly. He called out, his voice hoarse and broken. "Hello? Is anyone—" But the words died in his throat. Only silence answered him. He pushed open the heavy chamber doors, stepping into the larger room. Machines that once hummed with life now stood idle, some sparking occasionally, but most dark and dead. The air smelled faintly of ozone and dust. He moved cautiously, scanning the space for any sign of life, any hint that he was not alone. But there was none. Not a single human, not a single sound beyond the occasional drip of water echoing through the metallic corridors. His mind struggled to process the emptiness. 15,000 years. That was what the records had said before he entered stasis. 15,000 years had passed. The idea made him shiver. The world he had known was gone, and with it, everyone he had loved. Everyone he had known. His heart ached with a grief that was both ancient and immediate. He found his first clue as he wandered through the hallways of the facility, a terminal still flickering with weak light. Fingers trembling, he brushed away dust and debris and accessed the logs. Lines of data scrolled across the screen, mostly corrupted, but enough remained to tell part of the story. Humanity had faced an unknown catastrophe. Entire populations had vanished. Cities abandoned. Civilization had collapsed. But the details were missing, lost to time and decay. He left the underground facility and climbed the stairwell toward the surface, his steps echoing in the empty corridors. When he pushed open the exit, sunlight, or what had replaced it, struck him with a brilliance that made him shield his eyes. The world outside was unrecognizable. Where once skyscrapers had touched the clouds, only ruins remained, glass shattered, steel bent, and concrete cracked. Trees and plants had taken over, creeping through the streets, climbing over buildings and breaking through asphalt. Wildlife wandered freely in the open spaces. Birds perched on the remnants of traffic lights. A fox darted through the debris and disappeared into a collapsed alleyway. He walked cautiously, feeling the weight of loneliness pressing down on him. Every step he took reminded him that he was utterly alone, or at least alone as far as he could see. Abandoned cars littered the streets. A playground stood empty, the swing swaying gently in the wind. He touched a rusted bicycle, imagining the child who had once ridden it. 1,000 questions crowded his mind, but none had answers. As he explored further, he noticed details that made the emptiness feel even stranger. Newspapers still lay scattered on the ground, headlines frozen in time. The stories were meaningless now, snapshots of a world that had ceased to exist. Billboards advertised products that no one would ever use. Street signs were faded and broken. Everywhere he looked, there was proof that life had once thrived here. And now, it was gone. Despite the sadness, he felt a strange thrill. This world, abandoned as it was, belonged to him now. He could explore without limits, uncover secrets buried for thousands of years, and perhaps even find answers about what had happened. He moved toward the heart of the city, his eyes scanning the horizon. There in the distance, he saw the first sign of something unusual. Faint flickers of light like signals calling out from far beyond the ruins. His curiosity burned. Were these lights natural? Or was someone or something still alive? His heart pounded as he considered the possibility. For the first time since awakening, hope stirred in him. Maybe he was not as alone as he thought. Maybe humanity, or at least remnants of it, had survived somewhere. But caution tempered his excitement. The world had changed. He had no allies, no weapons, no clear plan. Every shadow could hide danger. Every building could collapse. Nature had reclaimed the land, and animals had adapted to the silence humans had left behind. He would need to be careful, but he could not resist the pull of the unknown. He spent the day exploring the nearby city blocks. Buildings that had once housed offices were now home to nests of birds and burrows of small mammals. He climbed a ruined skyscraper to survey the land. From the top, he saw rivers running through forests that had overtaken highways. Smoke rose in the distance, but not from fire, rather from geysers of steam venting from cracks in the earth. The planet had changed in his absence, evolving beyond the world he had left behind. As night fell, the city transformed again. Shadows stretched across broken streets. The temperature dropped and a chill settled in his bones. He lit a small fire using some old equipment he had found in the ruins. The flames danced, casting light across the crumbling walls. And for a moment he felt warmth and comfort. But the isolation pressed down on him, heavy and relentless. He thought about humanity, about the millions, billions who had vanished. Had they gone quietly, peacefully? Or had there been chaos, panic, destruction? He could not know. All he had were these empty streets and broken buildings. Yet something deep inside him refused to give in to despair. He was human, and humans were survivors by nature. If life persisted in any form after 15,000 years, he could find it. He would find it. The faint lights on the horizon had not gone out. As he stared at them, he made a silent vow. He would reach them. He would uncover the truth. And perhaps, just perhaps, he would find another soul in this silent world. With that thought, he curled up near the fire, letting exhaustion take him, yet feeling a spark of determination that would not fade. Tomorrow his journey would begin. And so, after 15,000 years of slumber, he stepped into a world of silence, decay, and mystery, but also a world of endless possibility. The adventure had only just begun. The sun rose slowly over the ruined skyline, casting long shadows across streets that had once teemed with life. He stirred, still wrapped in the thin warmth of the fire from the previous night. The city outside was quiet, but in its silence it spoke volumes. Every cracked pavement, every toppled streetlight, every vine-wrapped building told a story of disappearance, of abandonment, and of time that had moved without pause. He stepped out into the morning light, his boots crunching over shards of glass and broken asphalt. Birds called from the skeletal trees that had overtaken parking lots, and small animals darted between debris. The air was fresh but carried the faint smell of decay. Despite the eerie emptiness, he felt a sense of purpose stirring. Humanity might have vanished, but the world itself endured, and he had awoken to witness it. He explored a nearby street, passing what had once been a shopping district. Storefronts were shattered, their signs faded by centuries of sun and wind. One building still held the faint smell of paper, its shelves lined with books long forgotten. He picked up a book, its pages yellowed and brittle, and ran his fingers across the words. Though the language had not changed, the context felt alien. The stories spoke of people, ambitions, conflicts, and dreams, echoes of a world that had disappeared without trace. As he moved deeper into the city, he came across a park that had become a forest. The swings hung unevenly, tangled in vines, and the pond that had once reflected children's laughter was now dark and still, covered in algae. A family of deer moved silently through the grass, stopping to watch him with cautious curiosity before disappearing into the trees. For the first time, he felt the weight of time pressing upon him. 15,000 years had transformed civilization into memory, leaving only nature as witness. He continued walking, drawn toward the flickering lights he had seen the day before. The city seemed to stretch endlessly, but the lights pulsed persistently on the horizon, guiding him like a distant beacon. As he moved, he found more signs of the past: abandoned vehicles rusting into the earth, faded murals on building walls, and playgrounds frozen in time. Every detail reminded him that humanity had existed here, but every absence confirmed they were gone. By midday, he reached the outskirts of the city. The terrain changed from urban decay to overgrown wilderness. Roads were cracked, consumed by grasses and bushes, and the structures thinned, leaving isolated buildings scattered like forgotten monuments. He paused to rest near the remnants of a bridge, staring down at the river below. The water flowed clear, undisturbed, and teeming with fish. Life had persisted, but it had adapted without human guidance. The flickering lights drew closer as he moved through the wilderness, and curiosity burned in him. They did not resemble the natural glow of sunlight or fireflies. Instead, they seemed artificial, deliberate, Could they be signals from other survivors, or remnants of some advanced technology that had outlasted humanity? He quickened his pace, hope mingling with caution. After hours of walking, he reached the source of the lights. In a clearing, he discovered a structure unlike any he had ever seen. Its surface was smooth and metallic, reflecting the sunlight in a way that made it almost invisible from a distance. Strange patterns ran along its walls, glowing faintly in sequences that felt like communication. He circled it, careful not to touch anything before understanding it. The air around it thrummed with energy, subtle vibrations that made his hair stand on end. A low hum emanated from the structure, and as he stepped closer, a panel slid open silently. Inside, the room was vast and empty, illuminated by the soft glow of more lights along the walls. Screens flickered to life as he entered, displaying strange symbols and images. He studied them, recognizing fragments of maps, charts, and data streams. It was a repository of knowledge, but not human knowledge, at least not entirely. Some of the patterns suggested advanced technology beyond what he remembered from the past. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. A mechanical tone, soft but deliberate. A holographic projection appeared before him, forming a figure that seemed part human, part machine. It spoke in a voice both calm and commanding. "Welcome, traveler. You have awakened in a world that has moved beyond your time. Knowledge remains, but life has changed." He froze, unsure whether to trust the projection. "Where is everyone? What happened to humanity?" he asked, his voice echoing in the chamber. The figure responded without hesitation. "Humanity as you knew it has vanished. 15,000 years ago, a series of events forced the species to abandon planetary settlements. Some moved to distant worlds, leaving traces behind. Others did not survive. This repository preserves knowledge for those who awaken in the future." His mind raced. Could there really be survivors elsewhere in the universe? 15,000 years was long enough for humanity to have evolved or spread to other worlds. Could he find them? And what of the Earth he had returned to? Was it simply a memory now, a ghost of the past? He explored the structure further, discovering rows of storage units filled with devices, equipment, and more holographic records. He activated a console, and for the first time he saw glimpses of what humanity had become. Cities under domes on distant planets, starships navigating through cosmic storms, and civilizations thriving where Earth had failed. Humanity had survived, but he had been left behind. The realization struck him with a mix of despair and determination. He was alone on Earth, yet he had a purpose. The knowledge stored here could guide him, help him survive, and perhaps even reconnect with humanity somewhere among the stars. The repository seemed designed for this very moment, waiting for someone awake enough to understand, brave enough to explore, and determined enough to continue. As he gathered supplies and studied the maps, he noticed a small compartment tucked away in a corner. Inside, he found personal logs, recordings left by those who had once monitored Earth. Faces appeared on the screens, scientists, explorers, and ordinary citizens. They spoke of hope, fear, and the choices they had made. One recording stood out, a message from a leader urging anyone left behind to preserve knowledge and life, to never give up, and to remember that humanity's spirit was stronger than any catastrophe. He sat among the artifacts of the past, absorbing the lessons they contained. Though the streets outside were silent, though the cities were empty, though 15,000 years had passed, he felt a spark of human resilience ignite within him. The Earth might have been abandoned, but he would not be defeated. He would survive, explore, and perhaps one day reunite with the scattered descendants of humanity across the stars. Night fell once more, but this time he was not afraid. The hum of the repository, the faint glow of its lights, and the promise of knowledge around him gave him a sense of connection he had not felt in years, or in millennia. He set up a temporary camp inside the structure, using its resources to sustain himself. He had food supplies, water purification, and energy systems to power his equipment. He felt prepared, but he also knew the journey ahead would be long and full of unknown dangers. Before closing his eyes, he looked at the flickering lights outside. They no longer seemed distant and mysterious. They were a beacon, a challenge, and a promise. Tomorrow he would venture further, explore more of the world that had survived without humans, and seek answers to questions that had haunted him since he awoke. For the first time, after 15,000 years, he felt that he was not merely a survivor. He was the beginning of a new story, a human standing against time, holding the memory of a vanished world and ready to face whatever lay ahead. The morning sun streamed through the high windows of the metallic structure, casting long lines of light across the smooth floor. He had spent the night reviewing the data stored in the repository. Maps, star charts, and holographic recordings of humanity's distant colonies filled his mind with questions and possibilities. For the first time, he realized the world he had awoken to was not the end of humanity, but it was a challenge that would test his courage, resilience, and ingenuity. He packed a small rucksack with supplies he had found in the repository: purified water, nutrient rations, portable energy cells, and tools for navigation and communication. The device that displayed the flickering lights outside would guide him, but he did not yet know what those lights truly represented. They pulsed with a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, and he felt drawn to them as if the planet itself were calling him. Stepping outside, he took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. The city, though silent, seemed alive in its own way. Trees swayed gently in the breeze, and birds filled the empty streets with songs he had not heard in millennia. He walked carefully, avoiding loose debris and crumbling sidewalks. Each step brought him closer to the outskirts, where the wilderness had begun to reclaim the land. The path led him through abandoned suburbs. Houses, once vibrant with families and life, were now empty shells. He entered one home cautiously. Furniture was overturned, toys lay scattered on the floor, and the smell of decay hung faintly in the air. In a small room, he discovered a wall covered in photographs, people smiling, celebrating, living. He studied them closely, imagining their lives, their joys and struggles. Though they had vanished, their memory remained here, frozen in time. He pressed onward, moving toward the source of the flickering lights. As the city gave way to wilderness, the terrain became more challenging. Broken roads were overgrown with shrubs and small trees. Wild animals roamed freely, some watching him with curiosity, others disappearing into the underbrush. He learned quickly to move quietly and carefully, respecting the new order of this changed Earth. By midday, he reached the first signs of what might have been a scientific installation or observation post. Its exterior was partially buried under vines and moss, but the metal walls glimmered in the sunlight. He approached cautiously, scanning for danger. The entrance was unguarded, but as he stepped inside, he felt a subtle vibration under his feet, mechanical, precise and alive. Inside, holographic projections came to life, displaying star systems, planets, and fleets of spacecraft. He realized that humanity had expanded far beyond Earth. They had colonized distant worlds, building cities on planets with harsh climates, creating ecosystems to sustain life, and navigating the stars with ships that could travel faster than light. The repository he had discovered was just one of many, a remnant left behind to preserve knowledge for anyone who might awaken in the future. As he studied the displays, a soft voice filled the room. It was the same calm, commanding voice from the day before. "Traveler," it said, "you are the first human to awaken on this world in 15,000 years. The species continues elsewhere, but you have the opportunity to witness the transformation of your home planet and understand the history that led to this moment." He asked the question that had haunted him since awakening. Why was Earth abandoned? Why did humanity leave? The holographic figure responded, "Earth became unstable over centuries. Environmental collapse, resource depletion, and societal challenges forced humanity to seek new worlds. Not all survived the transition, and some settlements were lost. This planet, now returned to nature, is a record of what was and a reminder of what must not be forgotten." The enormity of the situation weighed on him. He had expected a post-apocalyptic world, but what he found was a planet that had healed itself. The forests and rivers, the animals and winds had reclaimed every inch of human civilization. Earth had endured without humans, but it had become an entirely different world. He decided to continue his journey toward the source of the lights, hoping they would provide further answers. Walking through the dense forest, he noticed the subtle signs of adaptation: trees with thicker bark, plants that glowed faintly in the dark, and animals with patterns that suggested evolution influenced by the absence of humans. Nature had not only survived, it had thrived. As he moved deeper into the wilderness, he came across a river that had carved its way through the land. The current was swift, but he managed to cross using fallen trees as makeshift bridges. On the opposite bank, the lights pulsed more clearly, forming shapes that seemed deliberate, almost like a pathway. Excitement and curiosity drove him forward, but he remained cautious. The world he knew had disappeared, and he could not predict what dangers might lie ahead. By late afternoon, he reached a plateau overlooking a vast valley. The flickering lights were clearer now, hundreds of small towers rising from the ground, each emitting a soft, pulsing glow. From this height he could see movement among them. Creatures he had never seen before, humanoid in shape but taller and more agile, moving with purpose. They appeared intelligent, organized, and aware of him, fear mixed with wonder. Were they descendants of humans who had adapted over millennia, or an entirely new species that had evolved after humanity's departure? He observed from a distance, careful not to reveal his presence. The creatures communicated through gestures and sounds, their towers forming a pattern that resembled a network or a signal grid. Whatever they were not hostile, at least not yet. Determined to learn more, he descended into the valley as night approached. The glow from the towers illuminated his path, casting shadows that danced along the landscape. He realized that this place, unlike the abandoned cities, was alive with activity. It was a civilization of a different kind, one that had emerged in the absence of humans but still retained echoes of structure and purpose. As he reached the edge of the settlement, a figure approached. It was humanoid but taller than any human he had known, with elongated limbs and luminous eyes. The being stopped a few meters away, observing him silently. Though he could not understand its language, he felt a sense of intelligence and curiosity in its gaze. Slowly, he raised his hands in a gesture of peace. The figure mirrored him, a silent acknowledgement that communication might be possible. He realized that the journey ahead would not only reveal the fate of humanity, but also the evolution of life on Earth in their absence. He would need to learn, adapt, and engage with beings who had inherited the planet in ways humans never had. He settled nearby for the night, using the glow of the towers to guide him. Sleep came fitfully, but his dreams were filled with visions of stars, distant worlds, and civilizations both human and not. He awoke with renewed determination. Tomorrow he would step further into the valley, make contact and uncover the truths hidden for 15,000 years. For the first time, he felt that his awakening was not merely an accident, it was an opportunity. He had survived when humanity had vanished, he had found knowledge left behind, and now he was standing at the threshold of a world that had grown beyond him. The adventure was only beginning, and the choices he made would shape not only his destiny but potentially the future of a planet that had endured without him. He awoke to a faint glow filtering through the trees. The towers in the valley pulsed softly, casting long streaks of light across the landscape. The creatures he had seen the night before were already moving, performing their strange, purposeful routines. Curiosity and determination pushed him forward. Today he would venture deeper into their settlement and attempt to understand who or what they were. He approached cautiously, mindful of every step. The creatures noticed him immediately, pausing to observe. Their movements were fluid, graceful, and deliberate, showing intelligence far beyond ordinary animals. They had humanoid shapes but elongated limbs, luminous eyes, and skin that shimmered faintly under the tower lights. Despite their alien appearance, he sensed a connection, a thread of intelligence and awareness that echoed humanity's own. One of the beings approached him slowly, its eyes fixed on him, studying. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace just as he had done before. The creature mirrored him, and for the first time he felt a flicker of understanding. Words were unnecessary. They communicated through gestures, expressions, and subtle vibrations in the air. He realized that this civilization had evolved in ways humans had not anticipated, developing a language of movement and light. He followed the being cautiously as it led him into the heart of the settlement. The towers were not just sources of light. They were communication nodes linked together in a network that pulsed with energy. Between them, platforms floated, moving silently across the valley like gliding paths. He marveled at the ingenuity of this society, built without humans yet thriving in the absence of human interference. In the center of the settlement, he found a large open area where more of the beings had gathered. They moved in patterns, creating shapes with light and movement that seemed to tell stories. He watched intently, noticing patterns and repetition. Slowly, a message emerged. The towers were more than communication devices. They were a living archive, preserving knowledge of Earth and its history, adapted by the beings who now inhabited it. He tried to communicate, pointing to himself, then to the towers, then to the sky. The creatures paused, considering, and then one of them moved toward a control panel. The lights on the towers shifted, forming patterns that aligned with his gestures. He realized they were attempting to understand him, just as he was trying to understand them. The interaction was slow and deliberate, a bridge being built across millennia of separation. Hours passed as he learned the basics of their communication. Simple ideas like direction, safety, and observation became clear. He showed them the repository's data, and they reacted with curiosity, touching the screens and analyzing the holograms. A connection was forming, not of words but of understanding, respect, and shared intelligence. For the first time since awakening, he felt he was not entirely alone on this world. As night fell, he observed the valley from a higher platform. The towers glowed like stars, pulsating with life, energy, and knowledge. The creatures moved among them, maintaining the network, preserving information, and sustaining their civilization. He realized that in humanity's absence, life had not only survived, it had adapted, evolved, and flourished in ways he could scarcely comprehend. Yet questions remained. Why had the towers been built? Why had these beings developed this civilization? And what role did humans play in the history they had inherited? The repository had given him fragments of answers, but the truth was deeper and more complex than he had imagined. He decided to spend the next days observing, learning, and interacting carefully, hoping to uncover more of the story. The following morning, he ventured into a section of the settlement he had not yet explored. The towers here were taller, more intricate, and connected by bridges that shimmered with energy. Some towers projected holographic landscapes depicting Earth as it had been centuries ago, cities bustling with humans, oceans teeming with life, and forests that stretched endlessly. He watched in awe, seeing the past and present converging in ways he had never thought possible. A creature approached carrying a small device that emitted soft pulses of light. It moved around him, scanning, then gestured toward the holograms. He realized it was trying to teach him, to show him the history of Earth through their perspective. The images depicted humanity's rise, the collapse of civilizations, and the eventual abandonment of the planet. But it also showed the evolution of life in humanity's absence, forests reclaiming cities, rivers reshaping landscapes, and creatures developing intelligence. The message became clear. Earth had endured, not because humans had survived, but because life itself had adapted and persisted. The beings before him were the inheritors of a world humans had once ruled, guardians of knowledge, and stewards of the planet's legacy. He marveled at their ingenuity, realizing that he had awoken in a world that was alive in ways humans had never imagined. Over the next several days, he continued to learn from the beings. He observed their rituals, their methods of communication, and their intricate interactions with the towers. They preserved not only the history of Earth, but also knowledge of distant worlds, technology, and survival strategies. He recognized that they were a living archive, bridging the past and the future, and he began to understand that his presence here was not accidental. With time, he became more comfortable interacting with them. He demonstrated tools he had found in the repository, showing how humans had created machines, devices, and structures. The beings responded with fascination, adapting his teachings to their own methods. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose beyond survival. He could contribute, teach, and exchange knowledge in ways that might help this new civilization, and perhaps reconnect with humanity's descendants elsewhere. One evening, as the valley glowed with the soft pulses of the towers, he reflected on his journey. 15,000 years had passed since humans last walked the earth. He had awoken to silence, isolation, and mystery, but in the shadows of abandoned cities, through forests reclaimed by nature, and within the glowing towers of intelligent beings, he had discovered a truth more profound than he could have imagined. Life endures, adapts, and thrives even in the absence of those who once ruled it. And now, as he stood among the inheritors of Earth, he understood that his journey was far from over. The towers, the beings, and the planet itself held secrets yet to be uncovered. Humanity's legacy was not lost. It had transformed, evolved, and found new forms of intelligence and resilience. His role was no longer merely as a survivor. He was a witness, a learner, and perhaps in time, a guide bridging the worlds of the past and the future. Night deepened over the valley, and he settled near one of the glowing towers, feeling a sense of calm and purpose he had never known. The beings moved gracefully around him, their light pulsing in a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. He realized that although humanity had vanished from Earth, the planet was alive with new intelligence, new stories, and new hope. Tomorrow he would venture further, explore the deeper sections of the valley, and uncover more about the beings who had inherited this world. He would learn, adapt, and continue to connect with life that had evolved beyond humans, but in ways that still reflected humanity's enduring spirit. For the first time in 15,000 years, he felt a sense of belonging not to humanity alone, not to the Earth he had known, but to the ongoing story of life itself. He had awoken in a world transformed yet vibrant, and he knew that the adventure ahead would redefine everything he had believed about survival, legacy, and the meaning of being human. The valley glowed softly as he rose with the dawn. 15,000 years had passed since humanity had vanished from Earth, yet now he stood among its new guardians, intelligent beings who had inherited a world humans could no longer sustain. The towers pulsed in harmony with the creatures, their rhythm a silent song of life, knowledge, and resilience. He felt both awe and humility, understanding that his journey was not only about survival but also about witnessing the rebirth of Earth. Today he would venture further into the heart of the settlement. The beings had guided him here, teaching him more about their language of gestures, light, and vibrations. Though their methods were different, the meaning was clear. They had adapted to a world humans had left behind, preserving history and learning to thrive. He moved carefully, observing, learning, and participating where he could. Every step brought him closer to understanding the planet's transformation. As he approached the central towers, he saw a new sight, a massive structure that pulsed more intensely than the others. It was taller, wider, and seemed to radiate knowledge itself. The beings moved around it with reverence, performing tasks and maintaining its systems. He realized this was the core of their civilization, a hub connecting their world with distant signals and memories. Perhaps, he thought, this was where the full story of humanity's disappearance could be found. He entered the core cautiously. Inside, holographic projections filled the space, showing Earth across centuries, cities rising and falling, forests reclaiming streets, oceans shifting, and species evolving. Then the projections shifted to distant worlds, human colonies thriving across planets in far corners of the galaxy. The repository had prepared him for this, but seeing it firsthand was overwhelming. Humanity had not vanished entirely. It had survived, spread, and transformed into something greater than he could have imagined. The voice from the previous encounters spoke again, calm and commanding. "Traveler, you have come far. You have witnessed Earth's transformation and the evolution of life in our absence. Humanity's story continues among the stars, but your presence here is significant. You are the link between past and future, between humans and the life that has flourished without them." He stepped closer to the projection, studying the images of human colonies. Ships glided between planets, cities grew under protective domes, and people thrived despite harsh environments. They survived, he whispered to himself. After all this time, they survived. His heart swelled with hope and wonder. Humanity had endured not on Earth but in the cosmos. They had carried their spirit, intelligence, and curiosity to the stars, leaving Earth to heal and evolve. Suddenly the projections shifted again, showing a sequence he had not expected: Earth's final days under human habitation. Environmental collapse, resource exhaustion, and societal challenges had forced humanity to leave. Cities had been abandoned, but efforts were made to preserve knowledge and life for the future. That was why the towers existed, why the intelligent beings had appeared. Earth's new stewards were meant to inherit a legacy, to ensure that life endured even without humans. He felt a mix of sorrow and admiration. Humanity had survived, yes, but Earth had changed in its absence, and the beings here had risen to the challenge, creating a civilization that respected the planet, preserved knowledge, and adapted in ways humans never could. He realized that survival was more than existence. It was about harmony, learning, and growth. As he studied the holograms, one of the beings approached him. It reached out, its luminous fingers tracing patterns in the air. The patterns merged with the projections, forming a story of cooperation, understanding, and evolution. He understood that they wanted to connect, to share knowledge, and perhaps to learn from him as well. Humanity's ingenuity could complement their wisdom, bridging the worlds of the past and the present. Days passed as he worked alongside the beings. He shared techniques from the repository, teaching them about human engineering, tools, and problem-solving. They responded eagerly, adapting his methods to their own systems. In return, he learned from them their ways of reading the environment, communicating without words, and maintaining the network of towers. Slowly, a bond formed, built not on similarity but on respect and shared purpose. One morning, as sunlight bathed the valley, the towers pulsed in unison, brighter than ever before. The beings gathered around him, their eyes glowing, their movements deliberate. He realized they were acknowledging him, accepting him as part of their world and recognizing his role as a witness and contributor. For the first time since awakening, he felt a profound connection, not only to this new civilization but to humanity's enduring legacy. He climbed to the highest platform overlooking the valley, watching the lights pulse across the landscape. Earth had survived in unexpected ways. Its forests, rivers, and wildlife had adapted, thriving without human interference. The intelligent beings had created a society rooted in preservation and understanding. Humanity's legacy continued in the stars, but on this planet, life had found new forms, new intelligence, and a new story to tell. A thought occurred to him. He could return to the stars, seek out humanity's descendants, and share what he had discovered. Or he could remain on Earth, helping this new civilization understand the past while building a future together. Both paths were possible, both paths held meaning. He felt a deep sense of clarity. Survival was not enough. True legacy required action, understanding, and connection. He made his choice. Earth had endured, and now he would endure with it. Not as a ruler, not as a conqueror, but as a learner, a teacher, and a bridge between worlds. The beings accepted him fully, guiding him as he explored the deeper layers of the towers, unlocking archives of knowledge and understanding the history of life on Earth. Together, they uncovered records of humans who had planned for the planet's future, leaving behind instructions, tools, and repositories to ensure life could continue even in their absence. Night fell over the valley, but he no longer feared the darkness. The towers glowed like a constellation, illuminating the valley and the beings who had become his companions. He realized that Earth's story was far from over. Humanity had vanished from its surface, yes, but life had adapted, evolved, and endured. And now, with his presence, the legacy of both humans and the inheritors of Earth could continue. As he lay down to rest near the glowing towers, he felt hope more strongly than he ever had. 15,000 years had passed, yet he had awakened to a world of possibilities. He was not alone. He had discovered life, intelligence, and connection in forms he had never imagined. The past had taught him lessons of resilience, loss, and perseverance. The present offered him companionship, knowledge, and purpose. And the future, uncertain yet full of potential, beckoned him forward. He closed his eyes, listening to the hum of the towers, the rustle of leaves, and the gentle movements of the beings around him. He realized that survival was not merely the continuation of life. It was the courage to face change, to learn, and to build bonds across time and species. Humanity's spirit endured, Earth had survived, and life, intelligent, resilient, and adaptable, would continue. When he awoke the next day, he knew his journey was far from over. There were more towers to explore, more records to study, and perhaps somewhere beyond Earth, human descendants to meet. But for now he stood in the valley, a witness to a world transformed, a planet reborn, and a civilization that had flourished in the absence of its creators. 15,000 years had passed, yet life endured. Humanity had vanished from Earth, but it had left behind a legacy of knowledge, resilience, and possibility. And now, with him awake, that legacy could continue, not in isolation, but in connection with the inheritors of this strange, beautiful, and enduring world. The stars above twinkled faintly, echoing the lights of the towers below. He understood that he was part of something far greater than himself, a story that spanned millennia, species, and worlds. And in that understanding, he found peace, purpose, and the thrill of discovery. The adventure that had begun with his awakening was not yet finished. 15,000 years had passed, but the story of life on Earth and the enduring spirit of humanity had only just begun.